Let's take a look at Master Dohan's teachings little bit more in detail. So I want to start with a story, the story which happened today. Um, so this morning, I went for a hike with my family, my daughter and wife. So we went for a hike. After we took a hike, it's one of the closer hills, and the place where we were sitting after the hike has a nice view of the hills. So you can watch what's going on around you. While we were sitting after our hike and we were watching this small family trying to do this hike around noontime, it was very hot. This family consists of a man and a small child. The child was in a stroller. And then there is a small girl, maybe 5, 6 years old. She was struggling to walk. She's very young. And then the wife. All of them, from the looks of it, I know that they are not doing hiking that many times. You can see from the way they dress up, the way they are trying to figure out things. So all of them reach the bottom of that small hill. That hill has a very big slope. It's more than 40, 45 degree slope. When we started our hike, we avoided that because we know that this is too steep. We want to enjoy our hike. So we took another route. So now we were just sitting and watching. And the baby was in the stroller. So initially what happened was this guy, he wanted to push the stroller and go up first. And then the wife and the small daughter followed. They might have reached maybe a few feet, maybe 10 feet. And then this guy realized that this is too steep. Okay. And then he turned around. He brought the stroller down and then left the stroller. And then he took the baby in his hands and he walked straight up. Remember, this is midday. So 12 in the noon. It's very hot. So he was carrying this baby and going up. As a man, and also he is so enthusiastic to doing this hike. So he was going a little bit faster. And the baby, the other daughter and his wife, and they weren't wearing the right kind of shoes to go do the hike. So they were struggling to go up. So we were watching this, they were struggling, and after some time we know that they will reach the summit, the top of the hill. They did that and they came back and then they went along their way. So when we watched this, so we were looking at when they were doing the hike. When I started thinking about the state of the mind of that man after he has done the hike is going to be like this. He will have a good sense of achievement. He knew that this hike was steep. This was a very tough hike. He was able to do it. And then he has a sense of achievement. Yes, I did this. So when he has that sense of achievement, he is going to try the next hike, maybe in the coming week or the following weeks, because he has done something. He has put in his efforts and then he got something in his hand. So he's so happy. And I was thinking about the state of the woman who was following him. She seems to be such a devoted woman to follow him in that hike with her small daughter. And even for her, when she has done it, of course, she may not be fully agree with what they have done, with the hike they have done, but she also tagged along with him. So now, when you go back and think about this person who has taken this hike, let's say you go back a day and think about what he might have thought before he has taken the hike. The very thought of taking the hike has started in his mind as a thought, a spark. A spark would have gone into his mind a day before or whenever that happened. A spark that says, I want to take a hike with my family. It all starts with that simple thought. So how did that thought happen? It might have happened because of the influence around him. He might have seen his friends doing the hike, or he wanted to do it for himself, whatever be the case. So there are something coming out from outside and then the spark comes up and he wants to achieve that goal. So when you think about this thought, the spark that happened at that very moment, that is the movement of your mind. Any thought that comes out of your mind, any emotion that you feel, any feelings that comes out of your mind, it is nothing but the movement that happens in your mind. Some disturbance. A disturbance can happen in your mind, and then you put that into action. You go for a hike. You go and join a new class. You want to try meditation. You want to try yoga. All of them starts with that mind moving. So if you look at this concept of the movement of the mind, our entire life, as we talked about how we meditated, our entire life is that movement. The movement, the disturbance that happens in our mind. Otherwise, the mind is going to be still. People talk about no thoughts meditation. The concept is this. When your mind is still, when your mind is not moving, when there are no more thoughts or emotions, nothing is bothering your mind, when the mind is still and tranquil in the state of samadhi, you are not going to do any activity. But whereas your entire life bubbles up, the entire life comes into its fullest glory when the mind starts acting, when the mind starts its movement, when things move, when the mind moves, the thoughts get generated, and then we do some activity, we do some physical activity, we start a plan, we start a new project in our mind, and then we put that into action, we put some efforts to get to the goal. Master Dogen talks about this movement of the mind. He gives a beautiful example. We can talk about that now. The example he talks about is, he says, when you are in a boat, when that boat is moving along a river and you are sitting inside the boat, and then when you watch the banks of that river, the trees and plants which are on the banks, and when the boat is moving, when you look at the banks, you may think that you are not moving at all, right? You may think the banks are moving, the earth is moving, the land is moving. I think all of us may have the same experience, right? So when you go in a train or a bus, even in a car, you can observe this. You may think you are sitting stationary, but the entire world is moving alongside with you. So Master Dogen talks about this fine example, which is, you think that the world is moving, but in fact, who is moving? When you are sitting on a boat, when you are sitting in a car, and when the car is moving, so who is moving? The person who is sitting inside the car is moving along with the vehicle, along with the boat. So you are in fact moving, but it appears the external world is moving. So in the same way, there is nothing happening in the external world if you observe very carefully. So when you go out, step out of your home and look at things, things are moving in their own way, but it doesn't require you to pay attention to what is going on outside. Because if your mind is still, if your mind is not disturbed by all those things happening around you, that is the natural state of your mind. We call this as a state of samadhi. And then if it is advanced a little bit more, we call it as nirvana. But at this point, your mind is not moving, but it seems that the world is moving. So let me give you another example, which I think many of you are familiar with. There were two disciples, so who were just walking by, and they saw a flag fluttering in the winds. I think I've shared this story with you before. So two disciples watching this flag, it's moving in the wind. One of the disciples said, they were in the Zen monastery. So one of the guys said, hey, look at this flag. It's moving because there is wind blowing. The wind is blowing, therefore the flag is moving. So the other guy who is looking at the same flag, he said, no, 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 I don't think that is the case. Because the flag is moving, it is generating the wind. So it is the other way around. You have to think the other way. Because the flag is moving, it is generating the wind. So there was a little bit of argument between these two guys. And then the master comes along. He is watching these two people arguing about as trivial as a flag moving. And he said, he called out both of them and then said, this is not the flag or it's not the wind that is moving. Only your minds are moving. Both of your minds are disturbed. You're not able to just walk by. Just looking at the flag, whether it's moving or not, doesn't matter. You can just walk past by. When your mind starts to generate that thought, when your mind is putting out that spark, that is when the entire life starts. The entire world, I won't say life, your entire world is something we create from that moment. You can simply ignore the flag and you can go by your own way, but your mind is not allowing you to do that. So when you look at something, you want to give your opinion upon that. You want to interact with what is happening outside. So that is when the whole problem starts. So there the master says, it is your mind. If your mind is quiet and calm and still, without being bothered by any other things that's happening around you, your life is in a bliss. We always think of getting some kind of happiness, some kind of calmness in our life, but it's always tough to find. But if you are able to keep this mind, the stillness with you all the time, you can see that happiness all the time. You can be in that state of happiness all the time. Happiness may not be the right word to use, because happiness, we think there is some excitement associated with it. Even happiness is something, it's not the right word. This is that tranquility you experience all the time. You don't need any kind of excitement. So if you take that example and applies to what Master Dogen says, he's saying the same thing. The boat being moving, but we think the world is moving, but it is not. It is our own mind. When your mind starts to move, when this mind generates thoughts, the whole thing comes into action. When things comes into action, when you want to achieve something, you have a goal, and then the whole drama starts. The drama here means, we can call this as samsara. We can call it by any other name. We wanted to go through this. As soon as a desire comes, as soon as a thought comes to achieve something, your mind is disturbed. With that disturbance, we analyze, we plan out things, we do things. We may see some successes, we may see some failures. We feel upset when we are not able to move forward. We feel elated, happy when things are going the way we want to be. And you struggle for a few weeks or a few years, depending on how big your ambition and your goal is. And through this whole process, your mind being disturbed is going through all these things. And then we end up being upset, being unhappy. There might be some happiness to move you forward. At the end of it, once you achieve that goal, many of us have this experience, right? You set out to do something and you achieved it after a week or after a month or after a year, you feel so happy. You know that you have achieved. At that moment, your mind is settling down and your mind feel that sense of peace and tranquility. That is the mind we want to achieve all the time. But in order to get to that, you have to go through this entire process. So that is our experience with life. So this is what Master Dogen talks about when he talks about the mind is causing all this movement. If you look from a different perspective, the movement of this mind, the movement of these thoughts, our very existence, we talk about existence all the time. Our very existence is nothing but this movement of this thought, the movement of your mind. When the mind moves, when thoughts are being generated, you become emotional, you get attached to something, you want to feel happy about something. Sometimes you feel sad, all this drama, right? We call it samsara. When all these things happen, we create our identity. That is where our identity lives. When you go through this drama wearing a particular character, right? We have this identity is nothing but our own character which we built, and we feel that we are existing. When all this identity goes away, when all this drama goes away, all these emotions and feelings and thoughts go away, what you are left with is there is nothing left with, because the whole thing is being generated. Just like in a pond, when the water is still, nothing is moving. But if you just throw a stone onto that pond, which is still, all these ripples start about, and you think that something is going on. That existence, we think, is our own identity. Our very existence is being generated by our own mind. If we are able to understand that this is just the act of the mind, which is creating our own existence, then you can easily understand all these concepts of birth and death and rebirth, everything can be understood. So when Shakyamuni Buddha went and sat in meditation and tried to find out what the cause of all these sufferings is, this is what he found out. Why we call him as a Buddha? We call him a Buddha because he has awakened from this dream of existence. This existence is just a dream which is generated by our own mind. So he found that out. He was able to understand the entire existence is nothing but something we have created, and he became aware of it. Oh, this is nothing, something real. So this is something we generate, and we get caught into that, and then we are suffering. So he woke up from this dream of existence. That's why he is called a Buddha. We, on the other hand, we think this existence is real because we are emotionally attached to this existence. Our emotions are the main reasons why we are not able to drop our mind. We think emotions in the strong emotions only. It's not that. Even our simple attachment, the way you dress up, it has its own attachment. All these emotions, we try to identify with all these emotions and then build our own self. So that self, because of our attachment through the emotions, we go through all the suffering. So when Buddha talks about attachment, he's not talking attachment to getting a car, attachment to your wife, attachment to your daughter. He's not talking about that. The attachment he's talking about is much, much more subtle. We think something which is real. We have our own identity and we want to get attached to it. We are emotionally attached to it. When your body, right now we have a body, and we think when small changes are happening to our body, when the body gets a little bit uncomfortable, we are suffering because of this reason, because you are emotionally attached to this form, which is your own body, and then we suffer. But when we know that this very form, the very body is all coming together because of various causes, there is no attachment to this body. You know that this is all coming together because of the mind, because of certain causes. And once these conditions are gone, there is no more I. There is no more personality. There is no more the so-called ego. And if you understand this very easily, very clearly, you don't have to think a lot about this rebirth, the heavens in the next life. All of those things need not be worried about. The reason we worry about all these things is very simple. We want to keep this identity to ourselves for forever. Nobody wants to die. Nobody wants to end this life and know that there is nothing more to it. So we want some hold. We want to have some permanency in this world of impermanence. This very insecurity. We feel insecure all the time, right? When I say insecurity, because of this insecurity, we are doing so many things in our life. The very intent of I'm going to a job and earning some money is nothing but my insecurity that I need this money to get some food and have my house and all that, so that I can be here, I can live here. So this is the insecurity we feel, and this is why we take up all the actions we do. So when we are able to understand this insecurity, the insecurity is there because all of us, at the bottom of our hearts, we know that this is not going to be permanent forever. So therefore, we do all the things possible to hold on to it. So that is the attachment Buddha is talking about. If we are able to understand this, how our mind works, we can easily come out of this. With that still and tranquil mind, when you are in the state of no thoughts and emotions and no feelings, and when you get to that state of samadhi, and then when you can look at these things very clearly, that's when the state of nirvana is achieved. So we talked about many of these things. And when you go back and look at what Master Dogen talks about, he is going to this core teaching of how a simple thought can change all the time, and that simple thought will motivate you to act. And if you go a little bit deeper, that thought itself is our own identity. That thought generates this movement, and we think this movement is our existence, which we don't want to lose, and we go through all the suffering. So with that, so let me end here. We have 5 more minutes to talk about if you have any questions.